Welcome, and thank you for joining us for this installment of Divorce and Finances, the Voice of the CFA. I'm Carol Lee Roberts, the president of the Institute for Divorce Financial Analysts. And the IDFA owns the Certified Divorce Financial Analyst designation and has certified more than 5,000 individuals in North America since its inception in 1993. The purpose of this podcast is to introduce our listeners to our CDFA professionals and learn a bit more about our professionals and how they work and how they can help couples going through divorce. Today, we're joined by Jane McAuliffe. Jane is our most recent past chair of the Board of Advisors. She's a certified financial analyst since 2015, and she's the founder of Collaborative Divorce Strategies, a divorce financial planning and financial mediation firm located in Rhode Island. Jane is a fee-based financial advisor and partner with Access Advisors. She helps clients with post-divorce transition management, including the transfer of assets post-divorce, investment management, and financial planning for their clients into their future. She got her start in the financial services and industry in 1998 with Fidelity and has held various roles in mainly advising clients. She now focuses her investment management practice in divorce planning. And welcome, Jane. Let's start with the big question. Why did you decide to focus on divorce financial planning?
It's funny, I actually fell into this by chance because when I went through my own divorce 10 years ago, I had been home with my kids for a couple of years. So I'd left the financial services industry for a couple of years. I had little kids and then found out I was going to be heading towards my own divorce. And then after re-entering the workforce in a different role, different industry, a friend of mine had asked me to consider coming back to the business, joining his firm. And he mentioned this, he's like, I think they have a divorce, financial planning designation or something. You should look into it. So I did. And I decided to return to the industry, obviously. And I looked into getting my CDFA certification. And I didn't really truthfully know at the time where it was going to lead me. I didn't really truly understand how much I would enjoy it when I first got my designation. And slowly but surely, my business blossomed just through networking with friends and family. And, I had kids in local sports. So I was talking to a lot of folks and telling them about what I was doing. And they said, oh, that seems like such a natural fit. It's something that's so needed and necessary, and you have the perfect background for it. So I think just catapulting from my own experience of going through divorce, being in the financial services industry, and not being super clear on, how the laws in my state translated into some of my financial decisions and outcomes and how those two related. And I really got sort of an intimate look at how those two play together. And I have loved every minute of doing this line of work. And it's what now my two practices are centered on. I work a lot, obviously, with divorcing individuals, and I'm also a trained mediator. So I do co-mediate with an attorney / mediator, a few of them. They handle all the legal side of things, and I handle all of the financial side of things. And so, why did I do it? Just really personal experience, and also just the empathy and compassion that I have of an honor, really, of guiding folks through this huge life event and shedding some perspective and helping them get a grasp on the assets, debts, and what their future picture looks like.
It's funny. I frequently have people do why would you want to do that? It's so emotional. It's so terrible. It's an awful part of anybody's life, which, Yes, divorce is not a pleasant experience for anyone going through it. I'm fully aware of that. But I think the more I talk to individual CDFA professionals, the more we're able to see that this can be a very rewarding field in that you can minimize how awful it has to be for clients.
I just got out of a 2-hour, very contentious mediation. They were sent to us by both of their attorneys. I'm actually just working with the wife, but the husband was totally on board with having me be in the mediation sessions, kind of opening up the lines of communication. And you're exactly right. Believe it or not, even though I may be working on one side of the equation, it ends up helping the other side. And by having collaborative meetings and being involved, it makes their spouse or my client be able to be educated and know what they're asking for and really hash through the questions that they have. Because when two people are divorcing, what they each think is fair is totally different, first of all. But then there's a lot of anger, animosity, potentially in cases. He did this, she did that. I'm mad about this. I want to make sure I get that money back for that. There's all these tit for tats, but really, like, just as an example, the last 2 hours, we spent that time, presenting what my client, the wife, was concerned about. We gave the husband a chance to explain, clarify, and we really got a lot of communication going between the two of them. And that just, he walked out of the meeting saying, I feel like we made a lot of progress today. It is extremely rewarding. Doesn't mean that they don't fight and argue, because there were a few, tense moments at the end of the meeting, but it does. It's so rewarding in the fact that you help these people gain clarity, whether it's what they thought it was going to be or what it really is. That you're helping them hash through this so that they know they're getting a fair and equitable deal out of the situation.
Well, and over the last few years, I've seen more and more emphasis on collaborative practice and mediated divorce settlements. And it makes sense, because if the clients are able to come to their own agreement, they're far more likely to abide by that agreement if it's at all possible. Our last podcast, we were speaking with Donna Cheswick, and she was talking about how, as she got going in her practice, she discovered she really enjoyed the qualified domestic relation order practice, or the quadro practice. I know that's not your focus. Can you tell us a little bit about how you practice as a CDFA?
Sure. Yeah. I do pension valuations and I enjoy that work. If someone's interested in keeping a pension, so I do that as part of my business, but really my practice is, aside from the basic process of divorce financial planning. And my process goes like this. I really start with people working on cash flow and budgeting at the start, because I think that's the biggest question of getting their handle around what's coming in, what's going out, what are we working with here to start. Second piece is valuing and establishing what the marital estate is and what could be considered as premarital or separate property, so that we're really getting clear on, okay, what are we dividing and who would like to keep what, and how do those liquid assets support each person, or illiquid assets, right? In some cases, someone wants to keep the house. Well, that means the other spouse is going to get all the liquid assets in exchange for that. But doing that analysis and helping clients understand, and this all ties into support. In my state, we don't have a calculation for spousal support. So the courts do consider division of assets first, and how their take on the assets could then potentially support them down the road before awarding any alimony. So that is one specific set. In addition to that, I really love, I do quite a bit of tracing work as well. So people will come to me and say, could you please look at these bank accounts or these credit card statements and give us an idea of lifestyle analysis or potential dissipation of assets, or, are these expenses, have they been incurred by one party only? And how does that translate into maybe credits or reimbursements back? I do a lot of that type of work. And then again, a big part of my business is mediation, co-mediation, and collaborative, really. I really enjoyed that piece of it. Coming into that, I'm not really doing full-blown financial planning with folks during that process, but we are still looking at budgets and cash flow and how do we make it work for both parties so that both people feel like they got a fair deal that works for them, right? Because what one person thinks is fair and what the other, they're two different things. But if they both walk away, I mean, we just talked about this in our meeting, that I don't really love the term, mediation is where both people walk away a little bit disappointed with their agreement. That's a successful mediation. In our world, that doesn't necessarily mean a successful mediation. I think both parties should feel that they are getting a fair deal, that it's equitable and fair for both people. And doesn't mean that everybody's going to be happy, but we try to work towards or give scenarios that could give each party the opportunity to be financially independent from one another.
I know in addition to your collaborative and mediation work, you also have served as an expert witness. Can you tell us a little bit about that and maybe your most memorable case as an expert witness?
I'm testifying tomorrow morning on a case. It'll be my third case. This one's going to be a little bit different. So I can't say what my favorite case is yet. I'll explain the other two trials I was on because that's a pretty interesting story too. But tomorrow I'm testifying on, I'm on the husband's team, and the wife has, she works for a major biotech corporation where she owns, she's been granted RSUs, restricted stock units, non-qualified stock options, and she has an employee stock purchase plan. So husband's attorney brought me in to help them with navigating what could be considered marital, how to divide them, what's best, and then also craft some language in the marital settlement agreement to protect our client in the event that they can't be divided from the plan level. Because in this case, wife will hold all the power because she's the employee spouse. All of those assets of executive compensation will be awarded to her. So I want to make sure that our client is protected, and in the fact that we have pretty clear instructions as to, when he'd like to exercise his options, what are her obligations to meet his request. So I think that'll be pretty interesting. It's also a case where there's been commingling of premarital and marital property. So I'm not going to be testifying to that because I'm not the lawyer, but I am going to be recounting a lot of the transactions of, what was there premaritally, but then what happened with the exercise of some of these options, what was sold, what was paid to taxes. So I'll be testifying to some of that as well tomorrow. The other two trials, I was brought in on my first case on the wife's side. She happened to have been divorced for 20 years. Husband was trying to retire, and he wanted to stop paying her lifetime alimony. She was awarded lifetime alimony, which is no longer a thing in Rhode Island. But he was like, okay, I think we can try to call this quits now. So I testified on behalf of her standard of living, her expenses. There was an expert witness on the other side, and we looked at what her financial plan looked like long-term based on the assets that she had, and how, if the alimony was taken away, how would her assets support her over her life. On the second trial that I was on, the husband in that first trial hired me to be on his team for his second divorce. So now I was testifying on behalf of the husband for this time around. And he had a much bigger marital estate with his second divorce, and his soon-to-be second ex-wife was going to be getting quite a sum of money as a division of assets. And I had to testify that she would have more than enough to live on, therefore she did not need alimony. I mean, we're talking almost $10 million. So that was my role in that case. And that case is actually on appeal in the Supreme Court right now because the first judge's decision, based on all the factors of the case and husband's contribution to her businesses that never made $1 the entire marriage, support of her child through private school, Ivy school, college, and medical school. He paid for all of it. Due to that, husband was awarded 60% of the marital estate. So it's now in appeal in the Supreme Court. So we're awaiting a decision. So it's been interesting reading, the Supreme Court trial memos or the Supreme Court memos, and all that. It can be really interesting work.
Well, we're going to have you back just so we get to hear the outcome of the appeal in the third case.
I know. And then, of course, that trial that I never testified on, but I was peripherally involved in, which you are aware of, that settled at like 11 o'clock on a Sunday night before the trial. That was also really interesting too. That had just gone on for so long. So I love the trial work too. It's fun. I think there's an element where I think people feel enlightened because you have someone kind of clearly explaining how the assets work, right? Like
Right.
Part of this is you're dealing with maybe individuals and or lawyers and judges who aren't super clear on how some of these things work. So there is an element of leveling the playing field for everybody, which makes me feel really good. Because then it opens up the pathway for people to actually come to decisions, right?
Yeah. Years ago, I remember seeing lots of information from the Certified Financial Planner Board of Standards that second career people entering the financial planning profession seem to be pilots, teachers, and dentists. And the motivations behind those were the pilots' forced retirement, the dentists are frequently rated as a very difficult job and low job satisfaction. And then finally, teachers, because so much of what we do as a financial planner and in divorce financial planning is actually educating our clients, both to what they have, what they're spending, and what creative solutions they may never have thought of. So
it's so true. And I think, well, what are the most rewarding parts of this job? That's definitely one of them, because then you start to see forward progress and you see baby steps towards resolutions. And then you start to get, more clarity from both sides. And then again, okay, I think when people are at an impasse, there's a lot of gray area, right? There's like, oh, that's not clear to me, or that I want this. And, but they don't know that's not fair when you actually lay everything out.
right.
The second part is just seeing people go through like the whole, I want to say grief cycle, but some people are happy about their divorce, but you see the progression of, them being uncertain and not sure and scared and maybe sad and angry and all those emotions. And then you see them kind of come through that life cycle of, okay, I'm at a resolution now, and now I'm marching off towards my future. And, having them become clients on the investment advisory side afterwards, I get to continue that relationship with them and, look back at how far they've come. So that is so rewarding. And most clients are very thankful that they have an expert guiding them through a lot of these huge life decisions.
Absolutely. Okay, let's take you back 10 years or more ago, and you're a newly minted CDFA. What do you wish you knew then that you know now?
Oh. I would say you don't know how far this designation can take you until you're actually doing the work. Because each year that I've been practicing in this niche, I learn more, I expand more, I meet more professionals to turn to. I think you just never know how big it could be and how intricate it could be and how, I don't know if that's the right way to term it, but I think each year I've seen more intricate and interesting cases where I learn as well as we're going, like how to get creative solutions. it's so much more than understanding the basics, right? If you're like, I jumped into this 2 feet head first, like I'm all in, and I knew that this was going to be where I wanted to be spending my focused time. So I definitely put this as like my passion, right? So I try to soak up as much information I can, but like, I guess you just don't know what can come your way until you're in the designation. And then you start to learn more about the cases and the situations. And oh God, I didn't think about that. What do we do with the $80 million real estate portfolio that's tied up? And how do we equalize the spouse on that? How do we refinance that debt? How do we value that real estate? Or I've had a few really interesting cases with spouses who have options and shares of privately held companies, right? Startup companies. How do we value that? And we do touch on that in the training, but until you're in it, and practicing and seeing these cases, like how do we solve it if the options and the shares cannot be transferred to an ex-spouse because it's a privately held small, company? Do we put it in a trust? Do we, so I've definitely learned so much. And I would say when you're just starting out, it's a whole world of learning. You will never be bored in this profession. You will never, ever not learn something new.
Well, and I think it's worth mentioning that there as many new things as you're going to encounter, there's also a community to back you up. I know you and I have been on Board of Advisors phone calls where one of the Board of Advisors will say, hey, I'm now encountering this. I haven't before. Does anybody know anybody? Does anybody have any experience? On our website, we have for our professionals, the IDFA Insider, where if you're hitting a new question, you can post there and ask if anybody else has done it. I know on Facebook, there's a couple of different groups. I know the Association for Divorce Financial Professionals does regional conference calls where people can, everybody doesn't have to invent their own wheel. We can work together. And if you're, for the first time dealing with a couple that's divorcing that happens to have a lot of horses and was doing horse breeding, there's Pam Friedman down in Texas who has experience with dividing that up. So it's interesting, and there's a lot of new stuff coming down the way, but there's also a lot of support out there. So you're not on your own when you first start.
I have such a great network of other seasoned CDFA professionals that I can turn to, bounce things off. Of course, there's so many great resources at the IDFA. At the annual meetings, you meet people who live in certain areas or have had certain experiences that you can pick their brain on. It is an awesome community to learn and keep doing these, if you're willing to participate in the the retreats or the annual meetings, you're going to learn so much. And that's how you get to understand and network with other CDFAs on a personal level, where you could pick up the phone and say, hey, ever run into this? Or do you know somebody? Because someone always knows somebody. And it really is the only way that you can kind of get your arms around the more complex cases too.
Right. I want to thank you for taking time to share with us some of your experiences today. I want to remind everyone that there are resources available on our website, institutedfa.com. There are blogs there. There are consumer-facing articles there for those of you who might be in the process of beginning divorce. You can use our Find a CDFA function to find a professional in your area. Thank you again, Jane, and we can't wait to hear the result of your 2 pending cases.
Thanks so much.